Hello, everyone. Welcome back in for another week of Palmetto Playbook. I'm your co-host, Alan Marcus Harder, the 5 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. producer here at WMBF News.
And I'm TJ Turner. I'm a digital content producer here at WMVF News. And we had a big game on Thursday night
Yeah,
here in Conway, where Coastal Carolina took on Marshall in a conference matchup. I believe both teams came into this game 4-3.
yeah,
And Coastal, the first half was close, and it looked like Marshall was keeping Coastal at a distance. It looked like they had about a 10-point lead for most of the first half, and then coming in a few minutes into that second half. And then after one turnover from Marshall in the second half, it just started the turnover train for them. And then I believe 4 straight possessions they gave the ball away.
yeah. It's the game started out in Marshall's way. You just saw the interception there. That was how Marshall first got on the board, 7-0 for Marshall. Yeah, they had pretty much control, like you mentioned. They had a 10-point lead going into half. I think Coastal cut it down to 3 at half, but then Marshall extended the 10-point lead early in this second half. But yeah, that Coastal defense just came alive in the second half. I know they used to be called the Black Swarm defense. I believe they call under the Tim Beck era. They're called the Soul Collectors. They definitely collected a few souls out there. Forcing 5 turnovers throughout the entire game. It was a really good game to see Coastal perform off the bye week, the national televised game. They even brought out the new uniforms.
Yep. They had sort of a Halloween party going on in that game, and it was definitely a scary night for Del Rio Wilson.
He was seeing ghosts out there.
The Coastal defense running around in those new jerseys were definitely causing him problems in the second half. And Samari Collier, I think, we've been talking about it the last few weeks. I think he's definitely solidified himself in that starting spot, and I don't think we're going to see a change anytime soon.
No, not with he's done. Yeah, after everything he's done. He had 4 total touchdowns, 2 through the air, 2 on the ground. Yeah, I don't see a change there. I think they finally found their QB1. Yeah, and I mean, with coming down the stretch of the season, we'll hope he'll keep it up.
Yeah, and they're looking at one more win, and they'll be bowl eligible after this game. They're 5-3 on the year, 4-1 in the Sun Belt, and they're only one game behind the James Madison right now. And I believe they play in 2 weeks.
They play the end of the season.
Yeah,
which I mean, I will say, this is a huge testament to the turnaround that Tim Beck has done. Because I mean, obviously, I was complaining earlier in the season about the lack of success for Coastal football, but they've definitely answered the call, and they've turned the tide around in a big way. Yeah, looking to be bowl eligible this coming week on Saturday. And yeah, this looks like a much different team than we saw against that. I want to say it was like 38-0 loss to East Carolina. You asked me at the end of that game where this team is going. For the rest of the season, I wouldn't tell you. We're sitting here at a 5-3 record, second in the SEC or
SEC,
the Sun Belt East. But yeah, I'm props to the coaching staff and the players for turning things around when it could have been the easy way of just letting the season get out of hand, but they've answered the call and have turned it around.
Yeah, after that Old Dominion game, things were looking bleak this year for the Chanticleers. And then after a couple trips to the drawing board, Tim Beck finally drew something up, and they've definitely turned the season around after those. And they believe this is 3 or 4 straight.
3. They're looking for their 4th straight this weekend.
And speaking of streaks, we've got some losing streaks going on across the state with
coaches
Clemson.
that were hoping to find some success at that drawing board on their own end, but
yeah, Clemson falls to Duke in a shootout. This game ended 46-45, and Dabo Swinney was irate the entire game on the sideline, and even in the booth afterwards during his interviews was definitely critical of the referees in this game and ended up receiving a fine for his interview after the game. But during the game, it was a huge game from Duke's quarterback, Darian Mensah, 361 yards and 4 touchdowns through the air. He was just picking apart that Clemson defense that struggled week in and week out ever since the start of the year.
Which, yeah, is continuing to surprise me how bad this Clemson's defense has been throughout this entire season. Usually that's their strong suit, but their defense looks very bad. Look, their Duke's quarterback just making their defense look like Swiss cheese out there, all the holes out there on the field. But As far as the concern or the controversy with the referees, I feel like Dabo has a right to be mad. The ending of this game, as a South Carolina fan, it reminds me of how the South Carolina game against LSU ended last year, where the referees, I'll take this to my grave. The referees cost South Carolina that game, and I feel like the same could be said for this week. I mean, granted, the referees weren't the ones out there giving up 45 points or 46 points to Duke. That's the defense's fault, but when you have a fourth down stop with like less than a minute to go in the game, and it gets wiped off the board because of a pass interference call, which I don't know. That could go either way. That's up. I'm not going to sit here and, but I don't know. That's a hard one to call with less than a minute to go after the fourth down stop. I feel like Dabo and Clemson fans have a reason to be upset.
Yeah, I feel like Dabo should, especially moving forward into this week, should turn that anger towards his own sideline,
Yeah.
and not necessarily at the refs, and because he's going to have to figure out something in these next couple weeks to even get into a bowl game at this point, which is looking like a long shot for both teams in South Carolina this year as we move. And Dabo Swinney actually called for his own job to the athletic director in his post-game meeting.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact wording on this, but he made something along the lines that maybe he'll be out of a job if this continues, and that I guess is an omen because the day later down there in Columbia, the offensive coordinator Mike Shula. I was about to say finally. He's no longer the offensive coordinator for the Gamecocks, which is a move that I feel like should have been happened a couple of weeks ago. But I mean, I guess it's for South Carolina. I feel like it was necessary to try to salvage something out of this season. The offense has been very bad this entire season. I feel like a huge part of that fell on Mike Shula. I mean, I'm not serious. I feel like it's a good thing that they're moving in a new direction because clearly Shula wasn't getting the job done. But like, by no means am I like happy that some guy like lost his job or whatever. But I feel like it was necessary for South Carolina. At no point during this season did this offense look comfortable. Even with what we're seeing with Lenore Sellers, I think he regressed a huge bit this season. He doesn't look like his confident self back there with the lack of offensive play, the offensive line. The receivers aren't getting the best out of like the play calling. It seems like Nick Harbor's the only one that are like stepping up or having the routes called for him. This offense has been a very very hard watch for this season. So we'll see where the team goes from here.
And then this week again, same story for South Carolina. They're in the game the whole way, get into the fourth quarter looking like you have a chance to win that game, and you lose a punt, a couple sacks, lose field position, and all of a sudden that game looks ugly. It ended up 30-14, but if you watch that entire game, this final score doesn't show how that game was. They played pretty even that entire game, and a couple mistakes down the stretch for South Carolina ended up leaving them with that 30-14 deficit. But that whole way they were within 3 to 7 points up until the final, I would say, 5 or 6 minutes in that game.
Yeah, I mean, despite being close on the scoreboard, and this may just be me cynical, like it's hard. I feel like Ole Miss had more control over the game because just with how unpredictable the South Carolina offense is, it's not like I'm over here expecting them to score. I mean, under a good system, I should be expecting them to score at least 20 points a game. I feel like even the stat line they showed or they mentioned on the broadcast before the game, South Carolina is the only team in the FBS that has not reached 350 total yards of offense this entire season, which is, going back to the Mike Shula issues. But did I feel confident that South Carolina could keep pace with Ole Miss offensive-wise? No, because I've seen the same story week after week after week. But, yeah, I mean, the scoreline was, I guess, it looked good for South Carolina. I mean, but yeah, I didn't see anything that like. I felt like Ole Miss had the game in the bag.
Yeah, coming into this year with the expectations South Carolina had, especially offensively, they were looking. I mean, you have Lenore Sellers and pro-ready quarterback coming into the year, Nick Harbor, freak athlete, one of the fastest, if not the fastest players in the country with that 6'5", 225-pound frame. And you've got running backs. They brought in Rasul Faison, who was a transfer, and there was a lot of controversy around him in the offseason as well, but a great running back there. You expect them to be one of the top premier offenses in the SEC, and this year with them, how much they've disappointed, it's not surprising that Mike Shula is out of here. The only surprise there is how long it took them to get him out of that position.
This week they have a bye week. I feel like this move should have been made the bye week after the LSU game, because even going into the LSU game, everyone was dissatisfied with what the offense has been doing this entire season. The struggles. Even then, I was saying Shula should have gone. The joke was that he should probably take up golf as a hobby, retire, play golf, because he's good at putting up the lowest score. But yeah, I mean, hopefully this means we can see better days ahead for the South Carolina offense. I don't think it could get worse than what we've seen this season, but.
And then moving on, we had South Carolina wasn't able to pull off the upset this week, but we had a couple big upsets this week. Georgia Tech, we've been talking about them every week, is one of the surprising teams in college football this year, and they were undefeated coming into this game. And NC State isn't a team you would expect to put up these kind of points and put up these numbers against a Georgia Tech team that has looked pretty unbeatable up until this point. But they did exactly that. They were up on upset alert this week and took down number 8 Georgia Tech to give them their first loss of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I figured that this would be a game that Georgia Tech would have in the bag pretty easily. NC State was sitting at a 4-4 record up and down throughout the season. Georgia Tech's offense still looked pretty good. You mentioned, or you have it here on our notes, that Haynes King had 511 all-purpose yards and 4 total touchdowns. I don't think you can really put the game on his fault. It's not his fault, but the defense for Georgia Tech falling through, giving up 48 points, and yeah, I mean, it was a crazy one to see because I didn't see it coming. But I mean, any upsets are you kind of like to watching those as a neutral viewer. But yeah, I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, this wasn't a game we expected to happen. As well as Miami drops another big game. They were the number 10 ranked team in the country after one loss. And Carson Beck continues to show what he showed at Georgia. He struggles to play and come up big in big games, as they had another big matchup here, close game, where they needed him to perform. And in the last game they needed it to him, he threw 4 interceptions. Not quite 4 in this game, but he threw another 2 interceptions in this game. And those mistakes definitely cost them down towards the end of this game, and they just couldn't pull it off against SMU as they lost 26-20.
Yeah, this is I feel like a much different Carson Beck we're seeing now than we did at the beginning of the season, when he was just lighting up the stat sheets and the scoreboard. But SMU, I mean, last year they made the ACC championship game, and they're in a pretty good position right now. I think they're sitting at 4-1 in the ACC, so they're no team to take lightly in that conference, and they have an explosive offense that can put points on the board. They only put up 26, I believe, in this game, but their quarterback very flashy, and they can score at will if they want, for the most part.
Yeah, with how Clemson and Miami have played so far with those losses, I believe right now if SMU and Georgia Tech win out, those two teams will be who you see in the ACC championship game, which would be the complete opposite of what I would have thought coming into this year, as Clemson looked primed for a huge season, and SMU coming off that year last year, losing a few players. I wouldn't have thought that they would be in a position to be in that game again and potentially in the playoff for a second year in a row. But they've impressed the second part of this year so far. As the first half, it was looking a little rough. They were expected to be better than they were to start the season with that 5-3 record coming into this game. But they've picked things up in the second half of the season so far, and they're looking primed for a run at the playoff, at least an opportunity in that ACC championship game if they can continue to win.
Yeah, this is definitely the part of the season you want to get hot at. You remember, like, South Carolina last year, they finished with a 9-3 record, but they finished the season winning 6 straight games, which catapulted them into the playoff contention race. But SMU has a good chance to keep this momentum going with the ACC being an easier conference than the SEC. to go out there and win. I feel like it's in their hands right now, which is a good spot to be in. You don't want to have to rely on other teams going down. They control their own destiny. That's what I was looking for. But
yeah, at this point, if they win out, they'll be in that ACC championship game with Miami having those 2 losses in the conference after this game. They only have 1 loss in the conference, so they'll control their own destiny. Same with Georgia Tech, as we were just talking about. And talking about surprising teams this year in Charlotte,
yeah,
the Carolina Panthers are now 5-4 on the year after a win in Lambeau Field. We were talking about this game last week coming into this one as one where we didn't really, to be completely fair, we didn't really give the Panthers much of a chance in this one. Going on the road into Lambeau. I know we were talking about them maybe potentially pulling this one off, but we didn't really give them a whole lot of a chance to come out and win this game, and that's exactly what they did. It was a close one the whole game, a grinded out game where there wasn't a lot of scores to be had, but the one touchdown that Rico Dowdle put in, or one of his 2 touchdowns, he gave an extra pump.
Yeah. Well, no, he did the right thing. If you watch the Key and Peele skit with Hingle McCringleberry, please tell me someone out there gets this reference, or else this is going to sound very weird. But under the skit from Key and Peele, you get two pump hip thrusts. The third hip thrust, you get flagged for it. The NFL having none of that. Rico Dowdle only did 2 hip thrusts and still got a flag. So I don't know. I feel like it's fair game. The no fun league strikes again. You gotta let these players have fun.
Yeah, Rico Dowdle in one of his touchdowns there, he's talking about his touchdown celebration, if you're not familiar with the Key and Peele skit, where he did a couple of hip thrusts in the end zone in which he was flagged for, which actually cost Carolina some points in this game because Green Bay elected to send them back on the PAT, which caused Fitzgerald to miss that PAT, which ended the regulation time in a tie where the Carolina Panthers kicked a field goal as time expired to win that game, and that's how the Panthers ended up with this win to make them 5-4 on the year. And I believe we're going to see Rico Dowdle in the backfield for the foreseeable future, getting a bulk of the carries. We were talking last week and the last couple weeks about maybe him and Chuba Hubbard having a split backfield, but this week it was all but a split backfield with Rico Dowdle having 25 carries to Chuba Hubbard's 5. He had 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. Chuba Hubbard only mustered up 17 yards in this game. Obviously far less carries, but Rico Dowdle has definitely made the most of this opportunity this year, especially when Chuba Hubbard was out and solidifying himself in that RB1 role. And he's looked like an RB1 in the NFL for a couple weeks, as he led the league in rushing yards for a couple weeks while he was the starter while Chuba Hubbard was out.
Yeah, I mean, you got to route up the hot hand at this point in the season, and Rico has definitely taken this position for their own, with the Panthers sitting at a 5-4 record. It's crazy to see. If you would have told me 9 games into the season if the Panthers would have the same record as the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't think I would say that's quite. I don't know if that's saying good things about Carolina or bad things about Kansas City. But yeah, I mean, this is where I'll correct myself from last week. Kansas City having that the game against Buffalo over the weekend. Buffalo coming out with the win. Last week I said James Cook, the running back for the Bills, was from Scotland County. I was wrong on that. I want to say he's from Miami, but the running back I was thinking of was Zamir White. They were, I believe, teammates at Georgia, but Zamir White's the one from Scotland County. So let me correct myself on that. But we'll get back on track now.
And then moving on, the World Series is wrapped up now after a crazy series and a crazy Game 7. But leading up to that Game 7, we had a few crazy games in there. We had an 18-inning game that traveled across multiple days.
Yeah.
It went overnight. And then they played a game the next day, or I guess the same day as the game finished up. And it was a wild series. Obviously, anytime you can get a Game 7 in sports, it's what you ask for in a playoff series. You want to always get to that Game 7, to that deciding game where stakes are high and everybody's playing as hard as they can because they need to. It's the last chance, last-ditch effort to get that, to hoist that trophy. and both teams were definitely fighting and clawing to get that trophy in the end of this game, and it came down to a matter of inches.
Yeah, well, Toronto jumping out of 3-0 lead. They had control of most of the game. I believe it was the top of the ninth inning where the Dodgers slowly clawed their way back into the game. I believe it was the ninth inning when was it Max Muncy that hit the tying home run, or was it Will Smith that hit the tying? But either way, they hit a tying home run in the ninth inning to send it into overtime, or not overtime, extra innings. What, I'm getting my sports mixed up. But it was definitely an exciting series. I feel very bad for the Toronto fans waiting for this moment for 31 or 32 years, almost there, having the game at home, and just just losing out to the Dodgers. But yeah, it was a rough way if you're a Dodgers, or not a rough way if you're a Blue Jays fan to lose the championship series. But I mean, I'm hoping for their sake, anyways, that that they're back here. It doesn't take 31 more years to get back to this spot, because I feel like they deserve that success that they saw this season.
I feel like the Dodgers were definitely the favorite coming into the year overall, but then with the Blue Jays making it this far into the playoffs, I think they were sort of the team that everybody was getting behind, because everybody expected the Dodgers to be here and expected them to win. With the Blue Jays coming out of nowhere, obviously they were a high seed, but you didn't expect them to be in this position and have a chance to win it at the end of the series, and they absolutely did. And for most of the fans, they thought they had it won with that play at the plate, which was a controversial call. Obviously, you can say this way or that way on most calls that refs make in different games, or umpires in this case, mixing up my sports too. Getting the umpires making a call at the plate. But you'd like to see a team like Toronto continue with this momentum that they can pick up off this year, off of a World Series berth, especially with them having 31 years since they've been here before. Growing up a Cubs fan, it isn't quite 100. I can't remember if it was 107 or 108 years since we made it to the World Series. But the 31 years, you'd like to see them in this position from year in and year out moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, it was a tough blow. I mean, I know the Dodgers' criticism of how much the best team that money can buy, with how much they've invested in this season. I know next season we're getting the automated umpires and stuff like that. Maybe we'll see a salary cap introduced. Who knows?
There's that play at the plate.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel like if you weren't a Dodgers fan, you were probably pulling for the Blue Jays. Just the Dodgers has become basically one of the villains in the MLB. This is now their second straight World Series win, which hasn't happened in 25 years since the Yankees. And I want to say like the 2001 or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure the Dodgers their names will still be in the contention next year. I'm hoping the Blue Jays are too.
And then hopefully the Atlanta Braves will be in the conversation next year, as the Atlanta Braves have hired a new manager. They got a new manager in the clubhouse over there in Atlanta, in Walt Weiss, as they've just picked him up, or just signed him as the manager for this season.
Yeah, this hiring kind of surprised me. I figured with all the turmoil that this organization has seen this season, obviously not living up to potential. I mean, they were one of, I feel like, maybe this is my bias speaking as a Braves fan, but I felt like they had a shot at getting to the World Series. I'm not saying they were going to win or anything like that, but I feel like they had a good shot. One of the better teams in the NL. No, they obviously didn't live up to potential. Their playoff hopes were basically done by the All-Star break. But you'd figure with everything going around that they wouldn't go in-house for this hire. They hired the bench coach for the Braves. Weiss has been the bench coach since 2018. He was there when they won the World Series in 2021, but I figured they'd go. I mean, I don't have like a name on the top of my head that I thought they were going to go after. I think they were linked with the bench coach for the Dodgers, but they ended up staying in house. I don't know how this is going to play out. I hope it's going to go well, but I don't know. I'm kind of nervous about it.
And then going from one championship series to another, the NASCAR championship race this weekend, Kyle Larson came out with the win. And I believe Denny Hamlin was leading for most of this race, and then Kyle Larson wound up with the win at the end of the race in Phoenix, I believe.
Yeah, so yeah, Denny Hamlin led not 2000. What am I talking about? 208 laps of the. I was like 312 laps of the. I'm not sure, but he led for the good majority of the race, and he had the race in his hands with 3 laps to go. I mean, coming into this, the storyline was Denny Hamlin's raced in the top dogs of NASCAR for 20 or nearly 20 years. He's yet to win his first championship. He was 3 laps away. William Byron crashed into the wall with a tire issue, causing a caution to come out, forcing overtime. Hamlin deciding to pit to get 4 tires, which put him in 11th place for that restart. I think Larson started 6th in that restart or somewhere around there. But Larson ended up holding off Hamlin and taking home his second title. It was very heartbreaking to watch with how everything unfolded for Hamlin's perspective when it was literally theirs for the taking, but a yellow flag and everything at the pit after that.
Yeah, it's definitely tough to see when you see a guy holding on to the race for that long, especially somebody who hasn't been here before and hasn't been able to win in this setting before, having the opportunity and having everything kind of in the bag leading into those last few laps, and then Kyle Larson pulling around and winding up with the win after a rough caution for Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of questions surrounding, like, should they get rid of the playoffs or, like, change how the format is? I mean, this is definitely a good conversation to have with how it unfolded, because basically right now all it comes down, all you have to be is the better driver on one day. It's not like, I mean, obviously there's still stuff you have to do well throughout the season to get to this point, but in order to win the championship, it all comes down to that one race, which is heartbreaking when you're Denny Hamlin. You've had success basically the entire season, and it's taken away because of caution. And I mean, I'm not blaming the crash or what. I'm not trying to throw blame at Byron who crashed or anything like that. That's how racing goes. But when it's there's a lot of there's definitely some conversations to be had. We'll see how that all unfolds.
And then switching gears after from NASCAR.
I see what you did there.
Charlotte FC has started their playoff run so far, and they are tied with it's New York City FC, as New York has 2 soccer clubs or football clubs in New York. It's New York City FC, and they've got the deciding game coming up on Friday. The series is tied 1-1. These series is a 3-game series, so it's best first to 2. So they're going to be trying to pick up that second win to move on into the next round of the playoffs there in the MLS. And then we've got the Hornets, who have started the season, I guess, to be expected. They're 3-4 on the year. They're pretty expected to be towards the middle or lower middle of the pack in the NBA this season, as they started off 3-4. Colin Sexton has shown to be a great addition from this offseason, as he's been averaging 16, 5, and 2.5 to start his stint with the Hornets, coming over from the Jazz, who they just played, as you can see here in the video clips we're showing. And he's definitely been a great addition to this Charlotte Hornets young core.
Yeah, they've definitely got a lot of pieces. They're not necessarily built to be competing right now or the next year or something like that. But they definitely have a young core, like you mentioned, to be maybe build upon for next couple of years. Sit right now with a 3-4 record. Even if they can stay close to 500, that's better than like their prediction coming into the season. Which, I mean, there's, like we'll mention coming up in shortly, but there's a long way to go for this season. It just got underway. Well, they're an exciting team to follow, but there's definitely be some growing pains to be expected with a bunch of new faces and young guys on the team.
Yeah, they're definitely a fun team to watch with all that youth on the roster. And I think if they can stick around 500 as a team who is projected to be in the lottery, even potentially maybe sneaking into the play-in would be kind of the upper echelon of what I think they're capable of this season with the roster. And I think they'd be happy with the play-in berth. If anything this season, anything outside the lottery will be exceeding expectations for this roster this season, as they are so young and they're just trying to work on getting some experience and really working those young guys in and getting healthy, as Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball have missed a couple games this season.
Yeah, they're definitely they'll be a fun team to watch, and we'll see if they get it pieced to get the puzzle pieced together correctly. I guess that's the best way, one of the a good analogy to put it.
Yeah, and then moving over, the Carolina Hurricanes have started the season well. We've been talking about their beginning to the season the last couple weeks, but they are now 7-4 on the season through 11 games, and they're sitting at third in their division so far this season. Each week we've mentioned it. They had expectations coming into the season, coming off a conference finals berth last year. They're expected to do the same, if not better, this season. And I think they're showing why they've had that preseason ranking and why they're definitely living up to it so far this season.
Yeah, they definitely started the season stronger than I feel like they are like right now. They've had a small dip in performances right now. I feel like they've lost a couple games in a row. Which, I mean, when you're still 7-4, which is a good place to be, but they struggled a bit the last week or so. So we'll see if they can get that turned back around. But like we just mentioned, there's a long way to go. Way too early to be saying if they're like where they're set at in the playoffs. But I mean, I'm sure they can get things turned back around.
Yeah, they're definitely gearing up for a playoff push this season with the roster that they have and the expectations coming into the season like we've talked about. But it's still too early to say where exactly they're going to be, and anything could happen between now and the end of the year with so many games left to play.
Yeah.
You have no idea at this point, but you'd like to think they're going to live up to those expectations, and they've definitely showed the promise that they are capable of living up to those expectations.
Since the hockey their season just now got started, we're introducing another sport. Their season just now getting underway, college basketball. And with everything that South Carolina has gone through this year, this is the best time of the season. Women's basketball is finally back. Don Staley, please save us. But yeah, college basketball is back. As of time of recording, we're recording this Tuesday afternoon. The Coastal Carolina's men's team and the women's team both lost close games Monday night. Clemson's men's basketball team and women's team, they won their games on Monday. South Carolina women's won their game on Monday night as well. The men's team plays tonight on Tuesday of recording. When you're watching this, you'll know the outcome of that game. But yeah, it's exciting to have college basketball back around.
Yeah, basketball season is personally my favorite season. I prefer March of basketball season as opposed to the beginning of the year because everybody's still trying to figure out where they're supposed to be in the rankings and kind of find their identity, especially with the scope of college sports right now. It's being treated like the NBA at this point. You've got guys switching teams, guys jumping to the league, taking NIL paychecks to go to different schools, and you almost have no retention of players at this point in college basketball as teams like Duke, Kentucky are fielding whole new rosters each and every year because they're sending 5, 6, 7 guys to the league.
Yeah, there's definitely a new era, like you mentioned, and I mean, it's an exciting time. College basketball is really fun to watch. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned in March, but throughout this entire season as well, and especially, I mean, a good thing to watch for the beginning of the season is you'll have a bunch of these high-ranked matchups. I know last night or Monday night we had Florida and Arizona. We have some more top-tier matchups coming around in the next few days. So, yeah, it's definitely a fun time to hop on in and start watching.
Yes, basketball season's just starting for college. You've got the end of the high school football season as playoffs are getting underway this season. Alan Marcus has got the whole rundown for South Carolina high schools and the playoffs are going to pan out.
Yeah, I compiled the list of our local teams, starting with Class 5A and the division or second group, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we have the 9-seeded Sockasty Braves playing at Lugoff Elgin, who are the 8th seed. The 12th seeded North Myrtle Beach playing at Lucy Beckham, the 5th seed. The 3 seed Myrtle Beach getting a bye in the second Division II of the 5A bracket. 11 seeded Conway playing at West Florence, the 6th seed, and then number 10 St. James at number 7 Westwood. Dipping down to the 5A Division One bracket. I guess that's the best way of describing it. I can't remember what word they used. The only local team in that one is Carolina Forest, who are on a bye, which that bracket's going to be very tough because that's the one that features Dutch Fork on the upper state side. If Carolina Forest makes it that far, Carolina Forest, they were the best Horry County team this season, winning their region. But I know last year they're going to try to build off. They earned the bye last year as well, going undefeated, I believe, in the region. But they lost I guess that'd be their second round since they had that first round bye. So hopefully they'll try to look for some success in the playoffs, unlike they did last year. But it's going to be tough considering the teams that you have in that bracket, especially if they make it as far to the championship game, because there's other good teams in that bracket as well, but I feel like Dutch Fork is obviously the favorite. They're basically the Alabama and Nick Saban of high school football in South Carolina. If you don't know the name Tom Knox, you should. And Dutch Fork, they're really good. Dipping down to Class 4A now, we have the one-seeded South Lawrence versus number 16 Darlington. South Lawrence looking for back-to-back state titles in the 4A. The 6-seeded Hartsville versus an 11 Crestwood, and then the 10-seeded Wilson at number 7th-seeded May River. Yeah, I feel like South Lawrence has a really good shot of getting back to the state title game. They've looked really good this season, especially in their region play, going undefeated, especially how dominant they were against Hartsville, who was also undefeated in their region until that final game of the season. Now dipping into 3A, which is where we get some controversy. We have the 16-seeded Georgetown Bulldogs, who haven't won a single game all season, still in the playoffs, playing on the road at Oceanside Collegiate. I guess I should say, if you think I'm being harsh, I'm from Georgetown. I went to Georgetown High School. I've been in Georgetown my whole life, except when I was in the University of South Carolina. It's crazy that they're still in the way that the 3A bracket is set up. 32 teams it's a 32-team playoffs. 32 teams in 3A have a football team. So every team gets in the playoffs, no matter how bad you are. And there's been questions about, well, I'll run down this because I compiled the list. With the two brackets that you have for 5A, which I think they should be, I feel like you should have one 5A state championship. You shouldn't have two separate brackets, but that's a story for a different day. But they have 48 teams in 5A, or 48 playoff teams in 5A out of 54 total 5A schools. So basically everyone's making it. There's 6 schools that don't make it. In 4A, 32 teams. 4A, it's a little bit better. There's only 32 playoff teams out of 41 schools. And then 2A, it's 32 playoff teams out of 46 total teams. And then dipping down to 1A, it's 31 playoff teams. One team has a bye for some reason. It's a 32-team bracket, but one has a bye. Out of 39 teams, there's a lot of questions surrounding the playoff, how a high school league has their playoffs set up, and I'll wrap up this. I mentioned Georgetown and Oceanside. Number 9 seed of Marlboro County at Swansea. Dillon at home against Fox Creek. Loris at home against Battery Creek. Waccamaw on the road against Hanahan, and then Aner on the road also as Newberry. For 2A, we have Lake City, the 5 seed at Hampton County. Andrews on the road at Sherrall, and then Atlantic Collegiate hosting Woodland. And then our last region, Class 1A, Hannah Pamplico on the road at Scott Branch. Johnsonville, the 2 seed versus Branchville. 1 seed, Carvers Bay, they won their region. They're undefeated on the season. I feel like they're going to be another good story to watch for the playoffs in Class 1A. Carvers Bay, they haven't seen as recent success as they have in, you go back a decade or whatever, it'd be a disgrace if they weren't the 1 seed. They were used to winning most of their games. Carvers Bay definitely produces talent on the high school level. The Gethers brothers and the Gethers family in general. There are definitely names that if you go to Carvers Bay, you mention those. They have a success there. And then we'll wrap this up. 4 seed Lakeview at Hardyville, and then Latta against Baptist Hill. So a bunch of local teams in the playoffs, and we'll even plug in Extra Point. We'll catch you up to speed on the highlights for Week 1 or the first round of the playoffs on Friday night here at WNBF News at 11 with our sports director Tegan Brown. But yeah, definitely exciting time with a bunch of teams looking for state championship glory. Some in better positions than others, but yeah.
I mean, coming into the playoffs with 0 wins, you're definitely not in as
Yeah.
good a position as some teams. It was interesting to see for me coming from outside of the state of how playing football my whole career and being in the playoffs each year of my high school career and knowing how the playoffs work in Illinois, where I'm from, and then coming here and seeing how many teams are actually in the playoffs was definitely a kind of a culture shock to me, because I was used to, you had to win all your games or maybe have one loss on the season in your conference and in your division in order to even have a chance at the playoff.
Yeah, like even when I was in high school, I believe, because Georgetown was in 3 at that point, I feel like they only, I mean, granted, this is still a lot of teams, but they took only the top 4 teams of each region and put those in the bracket, which would have cut that down from 16 in the lower state to 12, which you'll have a few other teams that are left out, but when you allow everyone, especially I'm speaking for the 3A bracket, when you allow every team into the playoffs, regardless of it, it just makes the regular season. What's the point of playing? Yeah. I mean, I know you'll have seeding. Well, seeding there's reasons for it, but still. But I mean, obviously they're not going to have a tough test. They're playing the 1 seed Oceanside Collegiate, who they look to be really good in 3A. I know Loris is a really good team. Oceanside won the state championship last year, defeating Loris and Dillon on their way to that championship last year. And I know, speaking for Oceanside, they made some waves earlier in that year. You mentioned when I was talking about Dutch Fork being the premier team in high school football, Oceanside actually defeated them earlier this season, which also is a 3A school going up and beating 5A Dutch Fork with a big task. I mean, so obviously Oceanside, I'd say Oceanside and Loris look to be on a collision course in that 3A bracket, which would be kind of cool to see how that plays out. Last year, Oceanside coming out on top, but we'll see if Loris can we'll see if Loris can get their get back.
Yeah, and then we'll be back here next week to recap all those matchups in the high school football playoffs. And moving into next week for college football, we've got Coastal Carolina is going to be hosting Georgia State this week, and that's a game where I think Coastal Carolina is expected to not only win but win handedly.
Yeah, Georgia State sitting at a 1-7 record, I believe, this season. But I will say this series against Coastal Carolina and Georgia State has just been very weird. Between the two teams, Coastal's 4-4 against Georgia State since I want to say like 2017 when they joined the Sun Belt. At no point during this series has the home team won the game. Coastal's 4 wins in this series have all been on the road, and Georgia State's 4 wins in the series have been here in Conway. I feel like this is a good chance for Coastal to get the home win. I don't want to jinx anything, knock on wood. I hope you can hear that. But, yeah, so Coastal going for the first home win against Georgia State in program history.
And then we've got a matchup at Clemson this week between Florida State and Clemson, which if you would have told us after week 1 that this matchup would have no playoff implications and no implications on the ACC championship game, probably would have told you were crazy, as both of these teams, heavyweight programs that you expect to be in the playoff, if not the ACC championship game and the playoffs year in and year out. But this year, both teams have struggled, and honestly, at this point, this game could be for a chance at a bowl game.
Or just keep their job. I was about to say this might be a loser job game, but yeah, this with the way things have turned around this season, it's. I mean, Florida State's offense, I feel like, is still on the upper echelon, and with how bad Clemson's defense has been,
you could see a lot of points this week.
Yeah. So I feel like Florida State probably has the upper hand. I haven't seen their defense as much, but I know how bad Clemson's defense is. So, yeah.
And then the Carolina Panthers are going to be hosting the New Orleans Saints this week, which is definitely another winnable game. And the big storyline on this one is going to be that this win could bring the Carolina Panthers to their preseason projected win total, which was 6 wins, as they're sitting at 5. wins so far on the year, which was very unexpected at this point, and they were expected to have 6 wins come the end of the season, which having the chance to get that win total this early in the season, I think is something that any Panthers fan would have loved to have heard before the year and would love to see moving forward.
Yeah, and especially with how bad this New Orleans Saints has been this season. Partially as speaking as a South Carolina Gamecock fan, I was hoping for some type of success for the Saints with Spencer Rattler under the helm. He's played all right, but there's been other issues around there. He's definitely had his own struggles. I'm not saying he was like well enough to do much better than what the record is showing for the New Orleans Saints, but it's definitely a game that the Panthers have a good shot at winning because just how bad the Saints have been. Which says I don't know if they've made a quarterback. I know is it Tyler Shook, the rook. Yeah, I feel like the Saints are right now. He's their starter, unless things get really off the rails, he'll still be the starter for this matchup. But yeah, it's definitely a game that it's probably a good thing the Carolina Panthers are playing the Saints because this is it's a good chance for a win for them.
Yeah, this would be a good win for the Carolina Panthers, especially moving, like I said, to that 6-win total that they were expected to be at the end of the year, not this early in the season. And then coming up this week for South Carolina, they're going to have a bye week, which I think is the perfect time for it.
Well, we may struggle. I don't know how many points we can put up on the bye week. But I will say Beamer has said in the past we are undefeated or we're really good at practice.
Great
so
weeks of practice.
This might be our week to show out. It's unfortunate it's against the bye week, but
hopefully they can come out on top this week.
Yeah, this is after the 5-week stretch that I feel like after the 5-week stretch that South Carolina has had against these ranked opponents. Or I got not 5 weeks, 4 weeks. Where the 5th ranked opponent is next week against A&M, which we'll get into that. I mean, I'm sure you know how that game's going to turn out, but it's been a huge drop off since that Kentucky game. I think South Carolina is 1-6 since the Vanderbilt game. Yeah, which that's not going to do too well.
Yeah, especially in a conference where you need to win 9-10 games to even have a shot at the title game, a shot at the playoff, and it's not looking great in Columbia this season. And
you have to win out to make a bowl game, and I don't see that happening. I mean, with the number 3 team Texas A&M next week, but yeah, it's definitely been a disappointing season, and I guess for South Carolina football fans, we only got 3 more weeks of it. So.
And then we'll be back to give you guys a look ahead into that game next week here on Palmetto Playbook. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll be back to go over the high school football roundup in the first week of the playoffs and then look ahead at what's going on around the other sports.
Yep, we'll see you back next week.